I lost count of how many times he kicked my body until it was bruised and how many times he kicked my face.
There is no way out. We don't have any documentation to work outside of the camp.
For many people, their home is their sanctuary, their safe place. But not for victims of domestic violence. And for victims in refugee camps on the Thai-Myanmar border, the escape options are limited. But this week, Doh Athan hears from women who have found a way out. Hello and welcome to Doh Athan, a weekly podcast about human rights stories from Myanmar. It's brought to you by Fondation Hirondelle. This episode is produced by a Doh Athan journalist. Names and voices may have been changed to protect contributors.
He told me he would kill me and dump me into the stream. He poured rice and curry on me and threw his mobile phone at me. The phone screen glass shattered and pierced my face. He hit me in the neck with the electric fan. I lost count of how many times he kicked my body until it was bruised and how many times he kicked my face.
30-year-old Maw Poe from Demoso is talking about how she was treated by her former husband. She was married to him for 7 years. They had 2 children together. But it wasn't long after they got married that his behaviour towards her became violent. Domestic violence is a violation of human rights that anyone, regardless of gender, age or ethnicity, might experience. But most victims are women. Like many women who find themselves in this situation, Maw Poe initially didn't know how to get out of it.
I was wondering about who I could ask for help, but when I actually went to get help, he caught me and followed me. Back then, whenever he came back home, and when I was alone with him, I had to flee. If he got violent, there was no one to stop him.
Maw Poe didn't have many choices. She lives in a refugee camp on the Thai-Myanmar border. But eventually she found out about a safe house run by the Karenni National Women's Organisation, or KNWO. Earlier this year, she got help there. Refugee camps on the Thai-Burma border operate under Thai authority, which grants them temporary shelter status. Registered residents get a stipend of 290 baht per person per month, that's about $8, and some basic food support. But they can't legally work outside the camp, and they can't leave without specific permission. A few educated residents might find work in the offices or school if they have connections, and others might find odd jobs or work illegally. But many residents have been subsisting in these camps for years or decades, unable to visualize a future where they're independent and can follow a vocation or earn a living. And this is part of the problem. Maw Tamala from KNWO says these conditions take a toll on people's mental health, and that can lead to gender-based violence, or GBV.
There is no way out. We don't have any documentation to work outside of the camp. Men drink alcohol and physically assault their wives. Children who witness their parents' violence become emotionally distressed and often get married early. During our displacement, our difficulty earning a living and rising prices are driving forces behind this.
The KNWO works in both Kayah State and in Karenni camps and communities along the border. They've seen an increase in gender-based violence cases since the military coup in Myanmar. And with the conflict in Kayah since the coup, More people have fled to Thailand, which puts pressure on space and resources in the camps. In refugee camp number 1 and 2, for example, KNWO recorded 28 cases of physical, sexual and emotional violence in 2019, then 38 in 2020 and 36 in 2021. In the first 5 months of this year, there were already 13 cases. And Maw Tamala points out that these are just the cases that are reported to them.
Some don't come to report it. We don't know if they're threatened by their husbands not to come, or they don't trust our services, or they can't access them. During our field visits, we learn about the situation of some women in these areas. But even if we know women are experiencing violence, we can't do anything unless they come to us.
Maw was the victim of domestic violence twice after a rough childhood. In Kaya State, her parents divorced when she was young, and she was left in the care of relatives, but they just sent her to a juvenile detention centre. After her release, she came to the same refugee camp as Maw Poe 16 years ago. This is where she met both husbands and their violence. But she knew how to deal with it better the second time around.
I experienced domestic violence in my first marriage. I experienced the same thing in my second one too. He drank and he played cards. Then he got physical. I divorced him 2 years ago. I knew that I was a victim of domestic violence. I couldn't tolerate what they did to me anymore.
2 years after her divorce, Maw has a part-time job at the camp and is raising her 2 children.
There are many challenges. School expenses for children on the one side and health and living expenses on another. Now I continue my life with 2 children. It's hard for me, but it's easier than living with my husband.
Like Maw Poe, Maw got help from KNWO. They not only provide temporary safe houses, but also coordinate with camp authorities to help resolve issues through legal means. For the last 6 years now, about twice a year, they've also been running gender-based violence awareness trainings in the camps. The goal is to try and change behaviour and help couples improve their relationships. The training includes family planning and childcare. Doh and Sawah recently attended one of these workshops. They've been married for 10 years and have 1 child. Doh is a teacher in the camp. He says he found the training very helpful.
In the past, we would yell at each other due to work problems. When I came home, tired from work, I would yell and curse when things didn't go my way. There was a lot of rough behavior. After attending the domestic violence training, I gradually understood.
After attending the training, Sawah wants other women in her community to speak up. She sees some women experiencing domestic violence who are suffering from depression or stress. She says the training helped her and her husband better understand each other.
He would shout, yell loudly, and say hurtful things. He blamed me by saying, "You're a woman, you should also work." I would get upset when he yelled. I know this is psychological abuse. When we attended the training, he discussed things properly. He understood better. It's difficult to get men to attend. It takes time to convince them.
KNWO is trying to increase male participation in GBV training sessions. Maw Tamala admits that their interest remains low and some men are in denial.
When it comes to GBV, many still don't want to acknowledge it. Some protest. They say, women are too much. They say, I was only saying a few things to her. There wasn't any bloodshed. I only touched her a little and she went to report it. She's shaming me. But there have been changes in the conversations. When some men attended the training, they said, "Teacher, we didn't understand before." When they understand, it's good for them.
But awareness training or even divorce is not a quick fix for domestic violence. Especially for these women. They can't relocate to a new secret home. Both the woman and her ex-husband are stuck in a small refugee camp, which they can't leave. Maw Poe is at the other end of the camp from her ex, but she doesn't feel completely safe.
Currently, I'm physically free, but in my mind, even though I live far away, I'm still afraid, haunted by his threats. Mentally, I'm not the person I used to be before. My mind is not well. I'm afraid he might really come back. My mind is always anxious.
KNWO acknowledges that women in the camps continue to be at risk even after a divorce. Maw Tamala said their staff also have to deal with abuse and threats.
When wives come to us for help, we receive verbal threats from husbands. Our staff are not safe. They have concerns. Perpetrators come to threaten them at their homes and taunt them when they go to the office.
There's perhaps more hope for future generations. KNWO and the workshop trainers say younger men are usually more gender sensitive than older men. Maw Day, who experienced violence in 2 marriages, is hoping her 2 teenage sons will be among those breaking the abusive pattern. She's raising them to respect women.
I want my children to become good people and to be educated. I teach my children not to ill-treat or be cruel to women, and when they marry someone, they should treat them well.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Doh Athan. We'd welcome your feedback on social media, and please follow or subscribe to our pages. This project on human rights reporting is supported by Fundación Hirondelle with the help of our donors. You can listen to our podcasts via the Doh Athan Facebook page. They can also be found on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify and Telegram. You can also listen every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. and Sunday morning from 6 to 7 a.m. on Voice of America Radio. Please tune in again next week.